If you're watching this, don't wait. Don't let pride steal your chance to say, I'm sorry, because I waited. I thought I had time. I thought she'd always be there. But then, she was gone. This is the story of how I lost my mother and the apologies she never got to hear. My name is Daniel. I'm 32 now, but I lost something precious when I was 28. My mother, Emily. My mother was the quiet kind. She wasn't loud, never raised her voice to win an argument or claim attention. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke louder than words ever could. She didn't demand anything from the world, not recognition, not praise, but she gave everything she had, quietly and without hesitation. She was the kind of person you could easily overlook in a crowded room, the one standing slightly to the side, hands folded, observing, listening. But for me, she was impossible to miss. From the time I was a little boy, scraped and bruised from clumsy adventures, she was always there, a soft hand on my back, a cool cloth on my forehead, a gentle, "You're okay, sweetheart." She never made grand speeches about love or sacrifice. She didn't need to. Her love showed up in smaller moments, perfectly ironed school shirts, packed lunches with little notes, staying up late to help me with a science project, even when she had to be up early for work. She was like a lighthouse, silent, steady, and always shining. She stood in the background of my life, casting light over dark waters. Whether I was aware of it or not, her strength was what helped me steer. On the days I felt lost, her calm steadiness somehow led me home. She was there on my first day of school, tears in her eyes but a smile on her face so I wouldn't be scared. She was there the day I got my college acceptance letter, holding it with trembling hands like it was gold. And she was there when I walked across the graduation stage, tucked somewhere in the middle row of the audience, clapping softly, crying quietly, not for herself, but for me. She never asked to be seen, but she saw everything. The days I pretended to be strong when I wasn't, the silent battles I fought inside, the fears I was too proud to speak out loud. She noticed it all, and she never judged, just listened, just loved. That was her way, not through noise, but through presence, not through words, but through unwavering care. I didn't realize it then, but looking back, I see now. Her quiet love was the loudest force in my life. But the truth is, I didn't notice her enough. Or maybe I did, but I took her for granted. I thought love meant saying thanks every once in a while, buying her a gift on Mother's Day, visiting on birthdays. I didn't realize love meant presence. It meant calls when she missed me, sitting down to listen when her voice trembled with age, letting her into my world when she asked simple questions like, "How are you really?" The last conversation I had with her wasn't kind. It was sharp. I was stressed from work, and she called me just to check in. She said, "You sound tired, Danny. Are you eating enough?" And I snapped, "Mom, I'm not a child anymore. Can you just stop calling every other day? It's exhausting." There was silence. Then she said softly, "Okay, sweetheart, I'll give you space." That was the last time I heard her voice. 4 days later, my sister Rachel called me at 6:13 a.m. She was crying. I sat up in bed, still half asleep, and asked what was wrong. "Daniel, it's Mom. She passed away this morning in her sleep." My heart didn't break. It collapsed. I remember driving through the early morning fog, the sky still gray, the world not quite awake. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, my chest tight with a fear I couldn't name. Every few minutes I whispered into the silence, over and over, "Please let this be a mistake. Please let me get there in time. Just one more day. Just one more." The road blurred in places. Maybe it was the fog. Maybe the tears I didn't want to admit were there. The radio was off. The world was hushed, like it already knew, like it was holding its breath for me. I don't remember parking. I barely remember unlocking the front door. But I remember the silence inside, a kind of stillness that felt too quiet, too final. The air felt heavier than it should have been. As I walked down the hallway, every step echoed like a drumbeat in my chest. Her room was dim, the curtains drawn but letting in just enough light to see her. She looked peaceful. still, like she had just fallen asleep, her face soft and calm, as if she'd been waiting for someone. For me, for that one last goodbye. I stood at the doorway, frozen. My legs didn't want to move, like stepping closer would make it more real. But I did. I walked to her side, knelt down, and reached for her hand, the same hand that once held mine through nightmares and scraped knees. It was cool, still warm enough to imagine she might wake up. I held it like I had when I was little, pressing it to my forehead, whispering, "I'm here. I made it, Mom. I'm here." I don't know how long I sat there. Time didn't feel real in that moment. Grief is strange like that. It bends the world, slows it down. I kept hoping for a breath, a twitch, a sign, but none came. All I could do was breathe in that quiet, sit with her. Let my tears fall freely now, no longer holding them back. And in that stillness, I felt something. Not just the crushing weight of loss, though, that was there, heavy and undeniable, but something else, something gentler, almost sacred, love. A kind of love that had always been there, but in that moment, seemed to wrap around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't cry out or demand attention. It simply was, like air, like gravity, like all the quiet things she had ever done for me, unnoticed, unspoken, but never absent. There, in that dim room, I could still feel it, in the way her face had softened, almost smiling, like she had finally let go of all the pain, not just from the illness, but maybe from years of holding everything together for me. Like she had passed into rest the way she lived, gently, gracefully, without fanfare. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains and laid itself across her cheek like a final caress. It was golden, almost holy, and in that soft glow I imagined her spirit lingering, not gone, just transformed, watching maybe, waiting, letting me know she was okay. There was a stillness in the room, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full of every bedtime story, every warm meal, every hug that lasted a little too long because she knew I needed it. It was full of her quiet strength, the kind that never made headlines but built lives. I realized then that love like hers doesn't vanish when breath stops. It doesn't break or fade. It stays. It settles in the corners of a room, in the folds of a favorite blanket, in the scent of lavender that still lingered in her pillow. It stays in the rhythm of my heartbeat, in the words I now say to comfort others, words I learned from her. Even in her final moment, my mother gave me something. Not a goodbye, but a reminder that she had loved me fully, endlessly, and without condition. And that kind of love doesn't die. It becomes part of you. It is you. She was gone, but she had waited long enough for me to say goodbye. But I was too late. I knelt beside her bed and sobbed like a child. I held her cold hand and said everything I never said when she was alive. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it. I love you. I've always loved you. I was just busy, tired, selfish." But it was too late. At the funeral, dozens of people came. More than I expected. Far more. Old neighbors I hadn't seen since childhood. Friends from church. Former coworkers. Even people I didn't recognize at all, quiet faces in the crowd, holding small bouquets or envelopes in trembling hands. One by one they came, filling the pews, whispering her name like a prayer. Emily. There was a hush in the room, not of sorrow alone, but of reverence, as if everyone knew they were there not just to mourn, but to honor something rare and beautiful. My mother didn't live a loud life, but in death her quiet legacy thundered through every tearful smile, every shaking voice that spoke her name. After the service, they came to me in waves. Each person had a story, a memory, a quiet act of kindness she had offered them, without ever expecting anything in return. An elderly man, eyes watery, told me how she used to bring him warm soup every Sunday after his wife passed. She never said much, he whispered, but she always sat with me until I finished, like she knew I hated eating alone. Another woman, someone I didn't recognize, clutched my hand tightly and said, "Your mother wrote me letters after I lost my son, every week for 3 months, just to remind me I wasn't forgotten." She reached into her purse and pulled one out, yellowed, soft at the edges, but the handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. "You are still seen, you are still loved," it read. A young man, barely older than me, shared how my mother had paid his grocery bill once when he was struggling. She never told anyone. She didn't want thanks. She just looked at him and said, "Take care of yourself, you matter." Story after story, like tiny lights in the dark, revealed a version of her I had always known instinctively, but never fully seen. She had spent her life noticing others. The widow next door, who hadn't had a proper meal in weeks. My mother left food on her doorstep, still warm, covered with foil, and a note that simply said, "You're not alone." A single mother said my mom left crayons and coloring books on her porch with no name, just the words, "For when the days feel long." A man who once delivered her mail said she left him cookies every Christmas with a card that said, "Thank you for showing up, rain or shine." No spotlight, no credit, no applause. Just kindness, over and over again. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part was this. While she never forgot anyone's pain, so few had noticed hers. She carried her sorrows in silence, a quiet kind of strength that never asked for help, only gave it. She bled love in every direction, even as she hurt in silence. And yet seeing all these people, their tears, their gratitude, the way they clutched their memories of her, like something sacred, I realized something profound. She was never alone. Her kindness had left fingerprints on hearts I never knew she touched. That day, standing in the crowd, listening to the stories, I saw my mother more clearly than I ever had before. Not just as my mother, but as a quiet healer, a giver, a woman who believed the smallest acts of love could change someone's day or life. And maybe that's what real greatness looks like. Not in headlines, but in whispered stories at a funeral. That night I sat in her room and opened a drawer in her bedside table. Inside was a worn notebook. The first page had just 3 words in her handwriting. "For Danny, always." It was filled with memories, letters she never gave me, pages of prayers she had written for me, notes about my childhood, fears she had when I moved out, how proud she was when I got my first job. She had been loving me silently, even when I pushed her away. And that's when the pain hit the deepest, knowing that she had forgiven me long before I ever asked. I visit her grave every week now. Rain or shine, cold or warm, it doesn't matter. It's become a rhythm, almost like breathing, something I have to do. The world moves on, people go back to their lives, but part of mine still pauses every Sunday morning in that quiet place, beneath a tree that rustles gently, where her name is etched in stone. I sit beside her, sometimes on the cold marble edge, sometimes on the grass when I don't care about the mess, and I talk to her. I tell her things, simple things, mundane things, sacred things. I tell her when work's been hard, or when I saw someone who reminded me of her at the grocery store. I tell her about dreams I had, and the strange way the light came through the blinds that morning. I tell her about the guilt that still catches me off guard in the middle of brushing my teeth, or while stirring soup, a sudden ache that says, "You should have done more. You should have said more." And so, I apologize, again and again. I say the things I should have said when her hands were still warm, when her eyes still opened at the sound of my voice. I tell her I'm sorry for being too busy, sorry for assuming she'd always be there, sorry for the time I snapped at her over nothing, sorry for not asking more questions about her life, about her dreams, about her. I know she can't hear me, not in the way she used to, not with ears, not with words, but maybe my heart can. Maybe that's why I keep coming, not to be heard, but to heal. Or maybe it's my punishment. Maybe these quiet conversations with stone and soil are the echoes of all the silences I once chose. Maybe it's penance to sit here with everything I never said, spilling now like a flood, too late to change anything. Or maybe it's both. Maybe this is what grief really is, not just missing someone, but trying to untangle all the things you left unsaid, all the ways you failed to understand them until it was too late. All I know is this. If you still have someone to say, I'm sorry to, say it. Say it today. Call them, write them, look them in the eye if you can. Because pride will never love you the way your mother does. Pride won't sit at your bedside when you're sick. It won't remember your birthday when the world forgets. It won't pray for you quietly at night. It won't forgive you before you even ask. But your mother did. Maybe still does. In silence. Once it arrives, once the door closes, once the last breath is taken, it's louder than anything. Louder than grief. Louder than regret. Louder than any apology you'll ever whisper at a graveside. So say it now. Don't wait for cold stone and wilting flowers. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone you love. And please call your mom, hug your dad, forgive your sibling. Don't wait for the silence, because when it comes, it never leaves.